The scent of freshly brewed coffee usually marked the quiet sanctity of Alexander Alex Thorne's mornings. It mingled with the faint, pleasant aroma of dew-kissed hydrangeas just outside his kitchen window, a familiar comfort in the sleepy, tree-lined suburb of Willow Creek. Alex, a man in his late 40s with a military-straight posture and eyes that held the quiet intensity of someone who had seen too much and now craved only order, valued this ritual above almost everything. His bungalow, meticulously maintained, was less a house and more a fortress of solitude, a calm harbor after years navigating the tempestuous seas of global conflict zones as an independent security consultant. These days, his battles were confined to the intricate chess game of stock market analysis from his home office, a far cry from sand-swept checkpoints and the thrum of armored vehicles. This particular Tuesday was meant to be no different. A crucial early morning video conference, with a client in Tokyo awaited him, a deal teetering on a knife edge, requiring his full, unblemished focus. He'd woken before dawn, as was his habit, the soft glow of his digital clock a familiar companion in the pre-sunrise stillness. After his usual rigorous workout, he'd settled down, steaming mug in hand, the headlines of the morning paper, spread across his polished oak table. Life was predictable, controllable, and that for Alex was exactly how it needed to be. Then, the calm shattered. A guttural roar, unnatural and jarring, ripped through the morning quiet. It was the sound of raw, untamed horsepower, not the polite hum of a neighbor's sedan. Alex's jaw tightened imperceptibly. New neighbors had moved into the grand, newly renovated mansion at the end of his cul-de-sac only a week ago, the sort who seemed to have more money than common sense, if the string of late-night parties and blaring music was any indication. He'd kept his distance, a silent observer of their chaotic arrival. Now, it seemed, their chaos was spilling over. He walked to his front window, pushing aside the sheer curtain. The rising sun, still low and golden, caught the aggressive lines of the intruder. It was a Lamborghini Aventador SVJ, a vulgar splash of highlighter green against the muted tones of his garden, parked with an astonishing degree of casual disregard, not just parked on the street, not just near his driveway. It was splayed diagonally, its rear end extending well past his property line, effectively creating an impenetrable, chrome-plated barrier across his entire driveway entrance. Alex stared. Disbelief, cold and sharp, turned into a slow burn of indignation. He was a man who prized precision and adherence to rules. This wasn't just poor parking. It was an act of blatant disrespect, an arrogant assertion of dominance in his personal space. He checked his watch. 7:15 a.m. His call was at 11 a.m. He needed to be in his office undisturbed at least 15 minutes prior to prepare. And more importantly, his weekly food delivery was scheduled for 7:45 a.m., a large truck that would need full access to his driveway. He placed his mug down with a deliberate thud that resonated through the quiet house. There was a protocol for situations like this. Engage calmly. Explain the problem. Expect resolution. He strode out, barefoot on the cool concrete of his porch, the crisp morning air doing little to cool the irritation simmering beneath his calm exterior. The Lamborghini gleamed, its exorbitant price tag screaming wealth, its defiant posture screaming entitlement. No one was in the driver's seat. He could hear faint, muffled music from inside the new mansion. He walked up to the driver's side window, debating a wrap on the tinted glass. He decided against it. Instead, he made his way to the front door of the garish new house, a monstrous modern edifice of glass and steel that seemed to mock the traditional brick homes around it. He pressed the doorbell. No immediate answer. He pressed it again, a little longer this time. Still nothing. He sighed. A slow, controlled exhale. Patience, he reminded himself. Give them a chance. Just as he was about to press a third time, the heavy oak door swung open with a theatrical flourish. A woman stood there, mid-30s, with a perfectly sculpted face framed by cascades of platinum blonde hair. She wore what looked like designer silk pajamas and held a steaming coffee cup, her eyes hidden behind oversized, dark sunglasses. Her lips, impossibly plump, curled into a faint, uninterested smile. This had to be Veronica, the rumored new socialite who had recently inherited a fortune. "Can I help you?" Her voice was saccharine, but laced with an undeniable edge of dismissal. She didn't bother to remove her sunglasses, making Alex feel like an inconvenient shadow. "Good morning," Alex began, his voice level, professional. "My name is Alex Thorne. I live next door." He gestured vaguely towards his own house. "I noticed your car, the green Lamborghini, is currently blocking my driveway." Veronica's head tilted slightly, a hint of something unreadable in her posture. She took a slow sip of her coffee. "Oh, that." Her tone suggested that was a minor, inconsequential detail. "Yes, it is, isn't it? Just for a few minutes. We had a rather late night." She gave a little laugh that sounded more like a bark. "I understand," Alex said, fighting the urge to grit his teeth. "However, I have a very important video conference at 8 o'clock and a delivery arriving at 1:45. I really need full access to my driveway immediately." Veronica's perfectly manicured hand rose, a dismissive gesture. "Look, hun, it's just a car. It'll move when I'm good and ready. My housekeeper needs to get the groceries out of it. And then I have to... Well, whatever it is I have to do. Just find another way out, or wait. What's the big deal?" Her voice dropped to a near whisper, dripping with condescension. "You look like a man who has plenty of time on his hands." The casual insult, the utter lack of apology or consideration, struck Alex like a physical blow. He felt a vein throb in his temple. "The big deal," he said, his voice now colder, "is that it's illegal to block a private driveway, and it's incredibly inconsiderate." Veronica snorted, a laugh bubbling up. "Inconsiderate? Darling, this is Willow Creek, not some military barracks. Lighten up. I'll move it when I feel like it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual things to do." With that, she began to close the door. Alex stepped forward, placing his hand firmly on the door frame, stopping its movement. Veronica's eyes, visible now, narrowed behind her sunglasses. "I'm not asking, Ms. Valerius," she supplied haughtily. "Veronica Valerius, and you are trespassing." "Ms. Valerius," Alex continued, his voice dangerously low, "I need that car moved, now, before I take matters into my own hands." Veronica's lips curled into a sneer. "Oh, is that a threat, little man? What are you going to do? Call the cops? They're friends with my father. Get a tow truck? Please, this car costs more than your entire house. You couldn't afford the fine for scratching it. Just wait, and don't bother me again." She yanked the door shut, the heavy wood thudding decisively. Alex stood there for a long moment, the echoed thud vibrating in his chest. The silence of the street felt like a judgment. He was seething, a slow, controlled burn that rarely ignited, but once lit, was almost impossible to extinguish. He wasn't just annoyed anymore, he felt utterly violated. His home, his sanctuary, his fundamental right to egress, had been brazenly disrespected by someone who believed their wealth granted them immunity from common decency. This wasn't just about a car. It was about principle. It was about standing, down or standing up. He walked slowly back to his own driveway, his eyes scanning the impossible obstacle. The Lamborghini seemed to mock him, a bright green monument to arrogance. His mind raced, calculating options. Call the police? They'd take hours if they even responded. A tow truck for a car like this? A legal nightmare, assuming he could. Even find one willing to touch it without fear of litigation. He looked at his watch again. 7:30 a.m. He was running out of time. His client in Tokyo wasn't known for his patience. His gaze drifted to his garage, a detached structure behind his house, larger than it appeared from the front. Most neighbors assumed it was where he kept his classic car, a meticulously restored vintage Mustang he occasionally took for weekend drives. They had no idea what else resided within its reinforced walls. A thought, cold and precise, formed in his mind. It wasn't an impulse, it was a solution, logical and direct, born of a lifetime of problem-solving in high-stakes environments. He had exhausted all conventional, polite avenues. He had been insulted, dismissed, and openly challenged. His footsteps were firm as he entered the garage, the faint smell of oil and aged metal filling the air. The space was enormous, designed not just for storage, but for heavy-duty maintenance. In the far corner, draped beneath a heavy canvas sheet, was a shape that dwarfed his Mustang. He pulled a chain, and the industrial-strength garage door ground, shut behind him, plunging the space into a comfortable, mechanical gloom. He moved with purpose, pulling off the canvas cover. The morning light, filtering through a single high window, glinted off the formidable steel behemoth. It wasn't a military vehicle in active service, not anymore. It was a FV-432 armored personnel carrier, a decommissioned British tank, painstakingly acquired and lovingly restored by Alex over years. He had purchased it legally, of course, as a collector's item, complete with all necessary permits and its main armament removed. But it was still a tank. It weighed over 15 tons, had tracks, made of hardened steel, and an engine that could pull a small train. It was street legal, bare. Veronica's scream tore through the morning, raw and desperate, as the tank lurched forward. It was a sound that seemed to shred the polite veneer of Willow Creek, revealing the primal fear beneath. Her face, usually so composed and disdainful, was a mask of terror, contorted beyond recognition. She scrambled backward, tripping over her own feet, her silk pajamas a blur against the manicured green lawn. The sound of the tank's tracks, a metallic grinding that spoke of irresistible force, drowned out her increasingly frantic cries. Alex, however, was deaf to her pleas, blind to her panic. His focus was absolute. His eyes locked on the space between the front of the FV-432 and the shimmering lime-green bumper of the Lamborghini. He was not moving to destroy it, not yet. He was moving to move it. His aim was to push the supercar, directly sideways, out of his driveway and onto the street, without crushing it. It was a calculated risk, a precise maneuver that required every ounce of his experience with heavy machinery and his steely nerves. The gap narrowed. Inches became centimeters. The air crackled with tension, thick with the smell of diesel and Veronica's expensive perfume. The crowd of neighbors, now numbering a dozen or more, stood transfixed, a silent, horrified audience. Mr. Henderson had retrieved his watering can but stood clutching it like a lifeline, his mouth agape. Mrs. Rodriguez's poodle, having returned, now whimpered beneath her skirt, sensing the immense, impending disruption. The tank's front plate, a thick slab of steel designed to withstand direct hits, made contact with the Lamborghini's front fender. It wasn't a crash, but a deliberate, slow caress of irresistible force. A sickening crunch echoed, surprisingly muted at first, as the supercar's delicate carbon fiber gave way. Then came the groans of tortured metal, the shrieks of tearing plastic, and the muffled pop of shattered glass. Veronica Valerius shrieked. Again, a more guttural sound this time, a primal cry of pain and violation. "No, my car! You monster! You're ruining it!" She surged forward, as if to physically stop the multi-ton behemoth with her bare hands, but then recoiled as the tank continued its relentless push. The Lamborghini, an inert, expensive toy, slid sideways with a scraping, grinding symphony of destruction. Its wheels, locked by the parking brake, skidded across the asphalt, leaving dark rubber streaks. The exquisite bodywork buckled inward, the sleek lines crumpling under the immense, unwavering pressure. Headlights popped, fenders tore, the windshield spiderwebbed. The sound of money being violently, unequivocally unmade filled the air. Alex kept his movements smooth, controlled. He was not a brute. He was an operator. He pushed the supercar just enough to clear his driveway, nudging it diagonally until its crumpled hulk rested entirely on the public street, its once pristine form now a grotesque parody of its former glory. The left side, where the tank had made contact, was a mangled mess of twisted metal and shattered composite, while the right side remained eerily untouched, a stark testament to the precision of the demolition. He brought the FV432 to a complete stop. The sudden cessation of the engine's roar left an unnatural silence in its wake, broken only by Veronica's ragged sobs. He looked down at her, still sobbing hysterically on her lawn, her face tear-streaked, her platinum hair disheveled. "There," Alex said, his voice flat, devoid of triumph or regret. "Your car is off my driveway. My driveway is clear." He engaged the reverse, the tank groaning as it slowly backed up, leaving Veronica and her mangled dream machine in its wake. He maneuvered it with a fluid grace born of years of training, guiding the massive vehicle back into his garage. The industrial door lowered with a final echoing rumble, sealing him and his mechanical beast away from the stunned neighborhood. The silence that followed was profound, heavy with shock and disbelief. Neighbors exchanged bewildered glances, their faces a mixture of horror, awe, and a strange, nascent satisfaction. For years, Willow Creek had quietly endured the subtle aggressions of the newly rich, the veiled insults of their exorbitant wealth, and the general feeling that money bought immunity. Now, that assumption lay crumpled and twisted in a lime-green heap on the street. Veronica, meanwhile, had collapsed to her knees beside her ruined car. She wasn't just crying. She was wailing, the sound piercing and unhinged. She ran her hands over the torn metal, the broken glass, as if trying to reassemble her shattered pride. My baby! He destroyed it! I'll kill him! I'll ruin him! You all saw it! He's insane!" Her words, however, lacked their usual power. They were the desperate cries of someone who had just lost something irreplaceable, and more importantly, had just lost face in the most spectacular way imaginable. Just then, a large white delivery truck, emblazoned with the logo of Willow Creek Organic Foods, lumbered around the corner. The driver, a young man named Kevin with a perpetually cheerful demeanor, whistled idly as he approached Alex's house. His eyes widened comically as he took in the scene. A crowd of slack-jawed neighbors, a hysterically sobbing woman in designer pajamas, and a Lamborghini that looked like it had wrestled a train and lost. He brought his truck to a slow, bewildered stop. "Whoa," he muttered to himself, leaning out the window. "What in the—" His gaze flickered to Alex's now clear driveway, then to the massive, freshly scraped streaks on the asphalt leading from Veronica's property. A slow, dawning realization spread across his face, replaced by a grin. He knew Alex Thorne. Alex was particular. But this was legendary. Veronica, seeing the truck, instantly redirected her fury. You saw it! He used a tank to destroy my car! Call the police! Call the media! Call my lawyers! Get that monster arrested!" She pointed a trembling finger at Alex's garage, then at the delivery truck, as if Kevin was somehow complicit. Kevin, however, was already pulling the large truck into Alex's driveway, navigating the space with practiced ease. He gave Veronica a polite, if slightly amused, nod. "Morning, ma'am. Just here for Mr. Thorne's delivery." He backed the truck perfectly to the garage entrance. Inside his home, Alex had already poured himself another cup of coffee. He walked to his home office, a spacious room lined with books and monitors, and sat down at his desk. He glanced at the time, 7:40 a.m. His food delivery was right on schedule. His video conference was in 20 minutes. He adjusted his tie. His movements calm and deliberate. The chaos outside, the shrill screams, the stunned silence of the neighborhood, it was external. His internal world, once briefly ruffled, had returned to its customary equilibrium. He heard the distinct thud of the delivery boxes being placed on his porch, followed by Kevin's cheerful voice calling out, "Have a good one, Mr. Thorne." Alex walked to the front door, opened it, and found Kevin standing there, a wide, knowing grin on his face. "Everything all right here, Mr. Thorne?" Kevin asked, his eyes twinkling as he gestured vaguely towards Veronica and her wrecked supercar. Alex offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Perfectly fine, Kevin. Thank you for the delivery." He picked up the boxes of organic produce and gourmet meats. "Have a good day." As Alex closed the door, the sounds from outside began to escalate again. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. It seemed Veronica had managed to get through to someone. Alex merely carried his groceries to the kitchen, humming a low, tuneless melody. He calmly put away his food, then returned to his office. By the time the first police cruiser, lights flashing, pulled up to Veronica's house, Alex was already logged into his video conference. He saw the flashes of blue and red through his front window, heard the distant, muffled voices of officers and the continuing, unhinged cries of Veronica Valerius. He muted his microphone and adjusted his webcam, ensuring his background was pristine, his demeanor professional. His client, a severe-looking Japanese businessman named Mr. Tanaka, appeared on screen. "Ah, Mr. Thorne. Good morning. Or perhaps, good evening for you. I trust you are well?" Alex nodded, his expression serene. "Good morning, Mr. Tanaka. I am very well, thank you. Just a typical quiet morning here in Willow Creek. Ready to proceed whenever you are." He gave a subtle, almost imperceptible glance towards the street outside, where the scene of chaotic confrontation was now fully unfolding, a testament to his unflappable resolve. Meanwhile, two police officers, their faces grim, were attempting to get a coherent statement from Veronica. She was still pointing, gesticulating wildly, her mascara now smudged down her cheeks, making her look less like a socialite and more like a furious, disheveled banshee. "He destroyed it! My car! He has a tank! A tank! And he used it to crush. My Lamborghini! Look!" She gestured dramatically at the ruined supercar. "Arrest him! He's a menace! He's a terrorist!" Officer Miller, a veteran with tired eyes who had seen it all, surveyed the scene. He looked at the mangled Lamborghini, then at Alex Thorne's perfectly manicured property, then at the perfectly clear driveway, then back at the hysterical woman. He then spotted the fresh, unmistakable track marks on the asphalt, leading precisely from Alex's garage to where the Lamborghini now rested. "Ma'am," Officer Miller said, his voice slow and deliberate, "can you explain why your vehicle was blocking Mr. Thorne's private driveway?" Veronica stopped short, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. I was just... It was only for a minute. And he had no right to do this." Officer Miller raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, blocking a private driveway is a violation of..." The initial shock of the tank incident rippled through Willow Creek like an earthquake, leaving behind a curious mixture of outrage, bewilderment, and a quiet, almost gleeful satisfaction. The neighborhood chat groups, usually reserved for lost pets and bake sale announcements, exploded. "Did anyone else see that? A tank? Poor Veronica, but... well, she did block his drive." This last sentiment, muttered in hushed tones behind cupped hands, hinted at a deeper, unarticulated resentment towards the Valeriuses' ostentatious displays of wealth and their thinly veiled contempt for anyone not in their gilded circle. For Alex Thorne, the immediate aftermath was a return to his usual meticulous routine. He'd finished his work, enjoyed his second coffee, and by mid-morning the police had completed their preliminary investigation. Officer Miller and Officer Chavez, accompanied by a visibly fuming Richard Valerius, paid him a visit. "Mr. Thorne," Officer Miller began, his expression neutral, but his eyes holding a distinct glint of curiosity. "We've taken statements from Ms. Valerius and Mr. Valerius. They are pressing charges for property damage and reckless endangerment." Alex, seated calmly in his living room, offered them bottled water. "Of course. As I explained earlier, her vehicle was illegally obstructing my property. I requested she move it. She refused. I then proceeded to clear the obstruction using means available to me." Richard Valerius, who had been pacing the perimeter of Alex's living room like a caged tiger, suddenly whirled around. "Means available? You used a military assault vehicle to destroy my wife's $250,000 car. This isn't over, Thorne. You'll regret this." Alex met his furious gaze, his own eyes unwavering. "Mr. Valerius, your wife was in violation of City Ordinance 34B. I possess all legal permits for my vehicle, and its use, while unorthodox, was within the bounds of my right to access my property. If you choose to pursue legal action, I assure you I am well prepared." His tone was polite, almost detached, which only seemed to fuel Richard's incandescent rage. Officer Miller cleared his throat. "Mr. Valerius, please calm down. Mr. Thorne, we understand your position. However, due to the nature of the damage and the value of the vehicle involved, this will likely proceed to civil court, regardless of any criminal charges. We're simply documenting the facts for our report." He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "Might be advisable to consult with an attorney, Mr. Thorne." Alex nodded. "I already have." The officers exchanged a glance. Richard Valerius spluttered something unintelligible, then stormed out, pulling Veronica, who was still muttering threats, with him. The silence they left behind was almost a relief. Later that afternoon, the first news vans began to arrive. A local news helicopter circled overhead, its whirring blades chopping through the suburban calm. The story was irresistible. Lamborghini versus tank in Sleepy Willow Creek. Alex, however, ignored the media circus. He was already on a call with his attorney, a sharp, no-nonsense legal mind named Evelyn Reed. "Alex, are you insane?" Evelyn's voice, usually a calm monotone, was laced with genuine incredulity. "A tank? Really?" "It was the most efficient solution, Evelyn," Alex replied, unperturbed, "and perfectly legal as we've discussed. Obstruction of private property. Self-help doctrine applies." "Yes, but the optics, Alex. A tank. This isn't a theoretical exercise. This is going to be a media firestorm and a very public, very nasty lawsuit. Richard Valerius has deep pockets and an even deeper ego." "Let them come," Alex said simply. "I have nothing to hide. I acted within my rights. They provoked this. And frankly, Evelyn, they needed a lesson in respect." Evelyn sighed, a sound of resigned admiration. "All right. Alex, I've already put together a preliminary defense. We'll countersue for the parking violation, the distress caused, and the disruption to your business. We'll paint them as arrogant, entitled bullies, but this is going to be a battle. They're going to throw everything at you." "Good," Alex responded, a rare, almost imperceptible flicker of something akin to anticipation in his eyes. "Let's begin." The Valerius' lawsuit landed with a predictable thud a few days later. It was everything Evelyn had predicted. A sprawling document detailing astronomical damages, emotional distress, and painting Alex as a dangerous, unstable individual. Richard Valerius, a man who believed every problem could be solved with enough. Money and legal pressure was clearly going for blood. The media, of course, gorged on it. Alex's face, usually reserved for obscure security journals, was plastered across local news channels. "Tank Man strikes," read one sensational headline. Opinions were wildly divided. Some condemned him as a vigilante. Others, a surprisingly large number, hailed him as a folk hero, a man who dared to stand up to the entitled elite. Social media buzzed with memes of his tank, often juxtaposed with crumpled luxury cars. Willow Creek itself became a strange pilgrimage site. Tourists drove slowly past Alex's house, craning their necks for a glimpse of the garage. Some left flowers, others left angry notes. Alex remained impassive, his blinds drawn, his routine unbroken. But the real drama unfolded at the first court hearing. The courtroom was packed, a microcosm of the divided public. Veronica, her face still drawn and pale, sat beside Richard, who radiated a palpable aura of vengeful determination. Alex, dressed in a sharp, understated suit, sat across. From them, his demeanor calm, almost serene. Evelyn Reed was a master of the concise, devastating argument. She opened by playing the security camera footage from Alex's house, a clear, irrefutable time-stamped record of the Lamborghini blocking the driveway, Veronica's dismissive refusal, and Alex's final, unheeded warning. The footage of the tank emerging was met with a ripple of gasps and murmurs in the gallery. "Your Honor," Evelyn stated, her voice clear and resonant, "my client, Mr. Thorne, repeatedly attempted to resolve a clear and actionable violation of his property rights. He was met with contempt and obstruction. When all conventional avenues were exhausted, and with time-sensitive professional and personal obligations pressing, he resorted to clearing the obstruction himself. The vehicle he used, while large, is legally owned and operated. Its sole purpose was to move the impeding object, not to destroy it maliciously. Any damage incurred was a direct consequence of the plaintiff's unlawful parking and subsequent refusal to comply with a reasonable request." The Valerius's high-powered attorney, a slick, aggressive man named Miles Corbin, scoffed. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. My client's vehicle, a priceless piece of automotive art, was subjected to an act of wanton destruction by a man who clearly has delusions of military grandeur. He is a danger to the community, and this was an act of premeditated malice, not lawful self-help." The arguments raged. Corbin presented photos of the mangled Lamborghini, emphasizing its value, painting Alex as a rogue agent. Evelyn countered, with the illegality of the initial parking, the documented attempts to resolve, and Alex's impeccable record as a law-abiding citizen. She even brought up Alex's extensive background as a security consultant, subtly suggesting his actions, while extreme, were born of a disciplined, problem-solving mindset, not instability. The judge, a stern woman known for her adherence to legal precedent, listened impassively. She seemed unimpressed by Richard Valerius's bluster and Veronica's tearful testimony. Her eyes kept returning to the time-stamped footage, the undeniable proof of the initial violation. As the first day of the hearing drew to a close, Miles Corbin, in a last-ditch effort to sensationalize the case and cast Alex in a negative light, delivered a dramatic closing statement. "And what about the sheer terror, Your Honor? The trauma inflicted upon my client as a 15-ton war machine bore down on her cherished possession? This was psychological warfare, an act designed to intimidate and humiliate. Alex, who had maintained his stoic composure throughout the day, shifted slightly in his seat. Just then Evelyn stood up, holding a document. "If I may, Your Honor," Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the lingering drama, "in light of Mr. Corbin's focus on psychological warfare and trauma, I'd like to introduce Exhibit D." She handed a file to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "This is a copy of Mr. Thorne's military discharge papers, Your Honor, along with his commendations from several international peacekeeping operations where he routinely operated heavily armored vehicles under live fire." A hush fell over the courtroom. Richard Valerius's jaw tightened. Veronica looked utterly confused. Evelyn continued, her voice low and impactful. "Mr. Thorne has faced genuine life-threatening psychological warfare. He has navigated real trauma. The notion that he would be intimidating a neighbor for a parking dispute with anything other than a professional, deliberate clearance of an obstruction is frankly, Your Honor, an insult to his service and an absurd attempt to deflect from the plaintiff's initial undisputed legal transgression. She paused, then delivered the final crushing blow. Furthermore, Your Honor, while the plaintiff claims terror, it is a matter of public record that Ms. Valerius was recorded, less than 2 hours after the incident, engaging in a highly animated phone conversation with a local car dealership, already discussing options for a new, even more expensive supercar. A ripple of murmurs, this time of incredulity and thinly veiled amusement, swept through the gallery. Richard Valerius visibly sagged in his seat, his face a mask of utter defa. The revelation about Veronica's immediate call to a luxury car dealership, just hours after claiming profound psychological trauma, reverberated through the courtroom. A collective intake of breath, then a wave of hushed whispers filled the air. The judge, usually impassive, allowed a flicker of something that looked suspiciously like a smirk to cross her face. Richard Valerius's carefully constructed image of victimhood and Veronica's tearful performance crumbled instantly. The news reports that evening, fueled by the leaked testimony, mercilessly lampooned the Valerius couple, solidifying Alex Thorne's accidental status as a folk hero standing against entitled excess. But humiliation, for people like the Valeriuses, was not a deterrent. It was fuel. Richard Valerius, a man whose entire empire was built on ruthless acquisition and crushing opposition, understood instinctively that this was no longer just about a damaged car. It was about reputation, about power, about proving that no ordinary man could defy them without severe consequences. He had lost the first skirmish in court, but the war, in his mind, had only just begun. Days turned into weeks. The media circus around Willow Creek eventually died down, replaced by other fleeting sensations. Yet the pressure on Alex subtly intensified. It began with nuisance actions. Richard Valerius, through various shell companies, attempted to buy the empty lot adjacent to Alex's property, ostensibly to build a towering, obnoxious structure that would overshadow Alex's bungalow. Alex, however, had quietly purchased the lot years ago, a forgotten detail in public records, and Veronica's real estate mogul husband was forced to back down, fuming. Then came the petty harassment. Obscene graffiti appeared on the street nearby Alex's house, quickly cleaned by his understanding neighbors. Unsubstantiated noise complaints were filed with the police almost daily, always originating from the Valerius mansion. Alex, armed with decibel readers and meticulously kept logs, calmly refuted each one. He even found, to his quiet amusement, that the daily presence of a police cruiser responding to a phantom complaint inadvertently deterred the remaining gawkers and journalists. One evening, after returning from a rare dinner out, Alex found his front lawn meticulously covered in several dozen pink flamingos, each with a crudely drawn tank on its side. It was a juvenile, almost comical act, but it held a sinister undertone of constant surveillance. Alex simply collected them all, bagged them, and left them by the Valerius's front gate with a neatly typed note. "Return to sender. Your property. Evelyn." Reed, during their weekly calls, warned him of the escalation. "They're testing you, Alex, trying to provoke a reaction. Richard won't give up. He'll hit where he thinks you're vulnerable. Expect them to target your business or your privacy next." Alex listened, unconcerned. "My business is secure. My finances are beyond reproach. My privacy, Evelyn, is already quite robustly defended." He gestured subtly to the array of high-definition cameras that blended seamlessly into his garden landscaping, their feeds meticulously monitored and recorded. Evelyn chuckled dryly. "Of course it is. Just be careful. People like Richard Valerius don't understand enough. They understand total victory or total annihilation. The true escalation came when Alex's independent security consulting business began to face an unusual and coordinated smear campaign. Anonymous online reviews, meticulously crafted to sound legitimate, popped up on industry forums, accusing Alex of unprofessionalism, unreliability, and even preposterously financial impropriety. Emails, seemingly from his long-standing clients, were sent to new prospects, containing vaguely damaging rumors and false warnings. Alex, however, had built his reputation over decades, not on fleeting online trends, but on rock-solid results and an ironclad network of trust. His clients, mostly high-net-worth individuals and discreet corporations, were savvy. They didn't rely on anonymous online chatter. They relied on direct relationships and verifiable track records. One afternoon, a call came through from Marcus Thorne, Alex's younger brother, a brilliant but cynical tech entrepreneur who ran a global cybersecurity firm. "Alex, got something interesting here. Seems someone's been trying to hack into your professional accounts. Not just email, but your client portals, secure servers, even your personal bank. Pretty sophisticated stuff for an amateur. Definitely not script kiddies." Alex's posture straightened, a flicker of cold interest in his eyes. "Valerius?" "Highly probable," Marcus confirmed. "The IP addresses are cloaked, but the pattern of attack, the specific targets, and the timing align perfectly with your recent automotive incident. We've locked them out, of course. My team is good, but this is a full-scale cyber assault, big brother. They're trying to cripple your livelihood." "Understood," Alex said. "Can you trace them?" Marcus chuckled. "Already on it. It'll take time, but we'll peel back the layers. They're using some pretty advanced routing, probably through multiple dark web proxies and compromised servers, but no one is untraceable. Not for us. This was a different kind of battlefield. One Alex knew well, but through a different lens. He had designed defenses against such attacks for others. Now, he was the target. The thought was not unsettling. It was stimulating. This wasn't a petty neighborhood squabble anymore. This was a professional challenge. He called Evelyn immediately. "They've escalated. They're attacking my business. Cyber attacks. Marcus is handling the technical defense, but we need to consider legal countermeasures." Evelyn's voice hardened. "Cyber attacks? That's a whole different ball game. That's federal, wire fraud, attempted corporate espionage, even racketeering, depending on the scope. This isn't just about a Lamborghini anymore. This is criminal." "Precisely," Alex affirmed. "And I want them to know I'm aware. I want them to feel the walls closing in." The next day, a carefully worded statement was released by Evelyn's firm without directly naming the Valeriuses. It alluded to malicious and coordinated digital attacks targeting Mr. Thorne's legitimate business interests, warned of imminent legal action with federal implications, and stated that all perpetrators, once identified, would face the full force of the law. The Valerius camp, already reeling from the previous court hearing, was thrown into a fresh panic. Richard, sitting in his opulent office, slammed his phone down. "What in the hell is Thorne doing now? Cyber attacks? Does he think I'm stupid? This is ridiculous." Veronica, curled on a velvet chaise lounge, sipping champagne, scoffed. "Darling, who cares? It's probably just some desperate attempt to gain sympathy. He's losing this lawsuit." "Isn't he?" Richard scoffed. "Don't be so sure. That lawyer of his is sharp. And if this cyber attack claim has any teeth, no, it can't. We were careful. We used a third party." He looked at his reflection in the polished surface of his mahogany desk, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. His usual bravado was starting to fray. Meanwhile, Marcus's team worked tirelessly, tracing the intricate digital breadcrumbs. It was a painstaking process, but they were the best. 2 weeks later, Marcus called Alex. "Got him," Marcus announced, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "It leads back to a server farm in Eastern Europe, but the payment trail for the service, that's where it gets interesting. Proxied through a series of shell corporations, but ultimately, the funding originates from an account linked to a company called Lux Terra Holdings. Sound familiar? Alex's mind immediately connected the dots. Lux Terra Holdings. Richard. Valerius's primary real estate investment firm. Very familiar. Bingo, Marcus said. It's a direct link. We have the logs, the payment confirmations, and the detailed attack methodology. It's ironclad, Alex. This isn't just nuisance. This is a deliberate, well-funded attempt to destroy your livelihood. Alex closed his eyes for a moment, a deep, satisfied breath escaping him. The game, it seemed, was escalating precisely as he had anticipated. Thank you, Marcus. Excellent work. Send everything to Evelyn. Evelyn, upon receiving the comprehensive data, moved swiftly. She filed an emergency motion with the court, requesting an immediate hearing to introduce new, damning evidence. The Valerius's legal team, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond. The next court session was electric. The judge, her expression now devoid of amusement and replaced by stern gravity, listened intently as Evelyn laid out the evidence. Detailed logs of the cyber attacks, the financial trail leading directly to Lux Terra Holdings, and expert testimony from Marcus's cybersecurity firm detailing the sophistication and intent of the attacks. Your Honor, Evelyn concluded, her voice ringing with quiet authority. This is not merely a civil dispute about property damage. This is a pattern of harassment, intimidation, and now, a criminal attempt to dismantle my client's professional life, initiated and funded by the plaintiffs in retaliation for a legally justifiable action. We are requesting that this court consider the full scope of their misconduct, including the federal implications of these cybercrimes, and that punitive damages be levied that reflect the severity of their actions. Miles Corbin, the Valerius's lawyer, looked utterly deflated. He had no credible defense. Richard Valerius sat rigid, his face pale, the usual arrogance replaced by a look of dawning horror. Veronica, for once, was silent, her eyes wide with a fear that seemed far more genuine than her previous claims of trauma. The stakes had been raised exponentially. They had played a dirty game, and now the gavel's sharp crack echoed in Richard Valerius's ears, a final, definitive pronouncement that shattered his carefully constructed world. The preliminary injunction against Lux Terra Holdings, the referral to federal authorities, the dismissal of their civil suit, and the order to pay Alex Thorne's substantial legal fees, followed by punitive damages. It was a cascading catastrophe. Veronica, beside him, was no longer merely trembling. She was openly weeping, her elegant facade entirely gone, revealing a woman utterly stripped of her power and privilege. For Alex, the judge's ruling was not a moment of triumph, but simply the logical conclusion to a problem he had calmly and methodically solved. He had stated his case, presented the facts, and allowed the system, once properly informed, to run its course. Evelyn, however, allowed herself a small, triumphant smile, a rare deviation from her professional composure. This was a victory against the kind of ingrained arrogance that often believed itself above the law. The aftermath was swift and brutal for the Valeriuses. The federal investigation, once triggered, moved with an efficiency that neither Richard nor Veronica had ever experienced. Lux Terra Holdings, built on a foundation of aggressive, sometimes questionable financial maneuvers, crumbled under intense scrutiny. Accounts were frozen, properties seized, and shell corporations meticulously unwound. The cyber attack evidence, provided by Marcus's team, was the linchpin, proving a deliberate criminal intent that went far beyond a mere property dispute. Within weeks, Richard Valerius, once the undisputed king of his real estate empire, was facing multiple indictments for wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. His carefully cultivated network of influence evaporated overnight. Deals collapsed, partners vanished, and the media, which had once fawned over his wealth, now feasted on his spectacular downfall. His grand Willow Creek mansion, once a symbol of his power, was now simply another asset subject to forfeiture, its garish modern architecture a stark monument to hubris. Veronica, whose life had been a seamless flow of luxury and indulgence, found herself stripped of everything. Her credit cards were declined, her designer wardrobe became irrelevant, and her social circle, as shallow as it was vast, abandoned her the moment her name became synonymous with scandal and ruin. The Lamborghini, once her pride and joy, remained a mangled monument outside Alex's house for a few days before it was unceremoniously towed away, not by a luxury flatbed, but by a standard tow truck, destined for an impound lot, its final disposition tied up in bankruptcy proceedings. The Willow Creek community, initially divided, now largely united in a quiet sense of karmic justice. There was no gloating, not openly, but a palpable sigh of relief rippled through the neighborhood. The loud parties ceased, the arrogant stares vanished. The Valerius mansion stood silent and empty, a ghost of its former self, eventually put up for auction by the government. Alex Thorne, true to form, retreated back into his quiet life. The media requests dried up when they realized he had nothing sensational to say. He wasn't interested in fame or notoriety. He was interested in order. His consulting business, far from being damaged, saw an unexpected surge in new clients. It seemed word of his unflappable resolve, his calm under pressure, and his unexpected methods had spread through the discreet circles he operated in. Many saw him not as a hothead, but as a man who solved problems definitively. One quiet Saturday morning. Several months after the incident, Alex was meticulously pruning his hydrangeas, the familiar scent a soothing balm. He heard the approach of a different kind of vehicle, a large moving truck pulling up to the Valerius's former mansion. A new family was moving in, a young couple with 2 children, their faces alight with excitement. They were ordinary, unassuming, and seemed genuinely delighted by the quiet, tree-lined street. The moving truck momentarily blocked a portion of the street, but not Alex's driveway. The husband, a kind-faced man in a work shirt, noticed Alex. He walked over, a friendly smile on his face. "Good morning," the man said, extending a hand. "Hi, I'm Mark. We're moving into the house. You must be Alex Thorne. We've, heard a few stories." He gestured vaguely at Alex's garage, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Alex shook his hand firmly. "Good morning, Mark. Welcome to Willow Creek." Mark chuckled. "Yeah, well, we promise not to block any driveways. We're more of a sensible sedan kind of family, and we definitely don't own a tank." He paused, then added, "But I have to say, Mr. Thorne, the story about the Lamborghini? You became a bit of a legend around here. It seems you set a new standard for neighborhood disputes." Alex merely offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile, his eyes holding a depth that spoke of more than just a single incident. "Sometimes, Mark," he said, turning back to his hydrangeas, his voice a low, steady rumble, "the most efficient solution is the simplest one. And sometimes, lessons must be delivered with a certain directness." He snipped a dead bloom with a precise click. The morning sun was warm, the air still. The new neighbors seemed pleasant, normal. The world, in Willow Creek, had righted itself. Order had been restored, not through negotiation or compromise, but through the unwavering application of principle, backed, perhaps, by an unlikely and very heavy form of justice. Alex Thorne, the quiet guardian of his peace, continued his pruning, the faint echo of a distant, crushing roar, a silent testament to the extraordinary lengths one man would go to protect his corner of the world.